Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This episode is with Dr. Eliza Sampey. Eliza is a former professional mountain bike athlete. She's done ultra endurance races that are honestly wild to think about. She is now a concussion specialist, and we talked about her rehab and journey coming back from a pretty serious brain injury and how she's ultimately helping people do the same. We also talked about her lifestyle and how she has really embraced an outdoors and freedom-oriented lifestyle. We talked training and managing stress and a bunch of other good topics. I think you'll really enjoy this episode. I know I did. Thanks so much for being here. If you're in need of help with training and rehab, please reach out to Dr. Dave Strength and Kindness on Instagram, and I'd love to help you get back to doing the things you love. Thanks so much for being here. Peace.
Okay.
All right. So, Dr. Eliza Sampey. Do you go by Liz? I now I feel like I should call you Liz all the time.
You can call me whatever. Professionally I go by Eliza. Friends
Okay.
call me Liz. Different circles.
Super
So
cool.
yeah.
Well, it's good to have you on. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
I've gotten to know you a little bit through just some business workings and stuff like that, but I'm just very intrigued about your overarching journey, and I also love your lifestyle, like at this current juncture. But one of the big things I wanted to talk about and kind of where I wanted to start is just like your um path into becoming a competitive and professional mountain biker. So
hmm
like how did that begin? Like, it's one of those things I think like we dream about something like that as a kid, but the trajectory becomes very, very unclear as we maybe, start to grow old.
hmm
But what did that look like for you?
Yeah, my trajectory into becoming a professional mountain biker, it's not something I ever really like dreamed of as a kid or anything, but I did love mountain biking. I grew up on a farm in southern Minnesota, and mountain biking was, well, just biking, was kind of a tool to get off the farm. I lived in the woods, and there were trails all around, and I had a like, banana seat like kids bike,
Hmm.
and I would mountain bike on this bike. And a friend and I decided it was a fun thing to sit on the banana seat double and try to ride backwards down these big hills and see how far we could get without crashing. So I've always been a little bit of a daredevil. Started mountain biking pretty seriously when I was 15. And, not competitively. I didn't even know that was the thing. I just was really into riding on trail. I loved it. And
Hmm.
then I went to college out in Colorado. I moved out to Colorado when I was 17 and went to college at Colorado State. And I got in with this crowd of guys that were mountain bikers, and I was the only girl. And we'd ride together during the week, and then they would go off to races on the weekends. And it just never occurred to me that I could go too, and I could also race and just be
Hmm.
like, hey, guys, see you next week. And then in grad school, in physical therapy school, I had a classmate and friend who was a road bike racer. And she was like, you should get a road bike. I was living in Denver at the time. I went to the CU medical school in Denver and couldn't get out to the mountains all the time. She's like, you should get a road bike. And so I did. And I started racing almost immediately. And I loved it. I was really dedicated to road racing for about 4 years and got to the elite level in road racing. And and then I missed my mountain bike. And so I was like, I wonder if I could just switch. Because at that point I knew about mountain bike racing. I was like, maybe I could just race mountain bikes. And so I did. And I won my first race because I was, fit and fast from the road. But I was kind of a technical nightmare. So I did a lot of work on my technical riding skills and, was just racing at the amateur level and just kind of working my way up. And, at one point, I was doing a women's clinic, a women's skills clinic, and this incredible coach and athlete named Allison Powers, who was a professional road racer at the time, also a mountain biker, kind of noticed me and asked if I had ever considered hiring a coach. And I was like, oh, no, I'm just doing this for fun. This isn't serious. She was like, well, I think you have some serious potential. And so, like, like, here's my number, like, keep in touch. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, interesting. And so, that year I kind of started taking things more seriously, and I started getting a lot better and I was winning races. And so I gave Allison a call and I was like, all right, game on. And
Yeah.
2 years later, I turned pro. So
What year was that you turned pro?
2012,
Dang, okay.
long
So
time ago,
when did you graduate from PT school?
2008.
Gotcha. All right. Super
Yeah.
cool. So,
So really long time ago, but yeah, and then my professional career kind of spanned the like ran the gamut of different types of mountain biking. And when I retired, which was the end of 2023, for the previous 5 years, I'd been focused on ultra endurance, self-supported bike pack racing, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like.
yeah.
So,
So, well, and that's what's really both interesting and cool. Like, I mean, your journey was almost like you just kind of followed your interests and like the
hmm
things that were in front of you, and it just kind of kept taking you into new and interesting things, right? Like I kind of I'm aware that there's different types of mountain bike racing and things like that. But then yeah, to hear that there's like ultra endurance types of rides where you're self-supported, how long would those rides be?
generally anywhere from like 300 to like 1,000+ miles. The longest race that I ever did was 800 miles. That was the Arizona Trail, and all the races I do are mostly single track trails. And that one took me 9 days, 11 hours, and 44 minutes.
Mm,
And there's a start and there's a finish, and you just go from point to point.
mm,
And you bivvy on the trail for a couple hours a night. You ride through the night as much as you can. You try to cut sleep as much as is reasonable, to still be able to ride fast. And yeah,
yeah,
it's awesome.
that's wild. That's what like gives me hope about like humans is like we can do this really like cool and interesting stuff when we just like we follow like passion. And honestly, I did I was not as prepared going into it, but like just doing a backyard ultra marathon a few weeks ago, it's like
Mm,
everybody was super nice. Like
hmm
it was like yeah, people are trying to do the best that they can. And there's
hmm
people who want to win it. Like the guy who won it ended up running like 136 miles or something like that over the course of I think like 30 hours or something like that. But
hmm
yeah, everybody was just like really kind. And like that's one of the things about like outdoor activities. I generally feel like there's definitely there's hormones going off and people, can be competitive in XYZ, but like it's generally the ultra endurance crowd seems pretty cool to me. So I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
So take us through just the when you started to take things more seriously and when you started to work with a coach, what was the difference between like what you had been doing and
hmm
like what you started to do, or or what was the refinement, what was the focus, those types of things.
Yeah, so at the time, I was in my mid-20s. I didn't know like nearly what I know now about programming and things. But I was just riding my bike a lot and I would try to ride fast and ride hard. And when I started working with Allison, it was very structured. And she wrote me workouts, interval workouts for my bike, different types of workouts for my bike, and then also strength programming. It was really comprehensive and I was 100% dedicated. It was like 7 years of like just 100% dedication to pro cycling.
Hmm.
And so I, really missed a workout. I would go out in all types of conditions. I built my entire life around it. I was also building my career as a physical therapist at the same time, but that very much took a backseat to my cycling. And yeah, so just, having a lot of structure, having a lot of accountability, having a mentor,
Hmm.
like she wasn't just a coach, she was a mentor, in like every area of life. And
Hmm.
I went through a gnarly divorce actually, when we were working together, and she definitely was really instrumental in helping me to like, stay the course in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's like what a lot of good, I'm not trying to be people's therapists when I work with people. Like I'm like, go get a therapist, like
Right,
people.
right.
But there is also an element of like, if you're a very human-centric practitioner, you're not going to avoid some of these conversations, and you're not going to not be
hmm
supportive. And
Yeah, well, and they impact you as an athlete too,
yeah, right,
It's like
yeah,
in the nice thing for me at the time was like I had my training to be the one consistent thing in my life because my
yeah,
entire life was like exploding into chaos. But I
yeah,
had my bike and I had my
yeah,
training and like that was something I could control and that was really healthy for me at the time.
yeah. I mean, and like 100, that's probably the biggest thing that gets me to go. I like to be physical. I like doing this stuff. Grew up playing sports. I still remember how it feels to, and I still try to do that stuff. But it really is like a very much a consistent practice that I
Hmm.
feel like I've meditated and I still meditate. I'm working on playing guitar. I'm working on
Hmm.
doing a few of these other things that are a little less like body centric. But
Yeah.
like the physical training is such a foundational piece of just like me having something to like do in a good
Hmm.
in a good way on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
And I got
Yeah,
a trek,
it's
I got a Trek Marlin back here. It's
I see it.
nothing
Yeah.
fancy, but I
I mean,
love
it doesn't need to be.
love going out and riding that. We have some single
Yeah.
track trails. I am trying to like that's kind of what I wanted to talk to because like bikes when I like my wife's when I was gonna get us some bikes, my wife's like how much do bikes cost? And I'm like, "Oh my God. You want to start talking about like uh some of the it's just like $200, 300 I'm like, yeah, like are we talking a huffy here? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I so I'm gonna come back to the biking and the maybe the tech and some of that stuff because I think it's important and cool. But you mentioned like when you were just starting to go, there was this element, or when you were like you were just kind of riding hard, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes, especially like when maybe we are younger, and we don't have as many demands, like that's not a bad way to train. But where does it often take people that like I'm kind of leading you down a road here. I don't want to do that per se, but like I think sometimes it's really helpful to take out some of the noise of like
Hmm.
gotta do XYZ and just
Hmm.
train hard. But what happens to people is inevitably you get really into you like you can run yourself into the ground, right?
Oh,
Especially
yeah.
love stuff, right? So,
Hmm.
what were some of the things maybe that you maybe learned about yourself? Well, like you needed to like push or pull back, or what was the benefit of strength training in conjunction of riding? Like, give us some of those
Hmm.
takeaways for maybe anybody who's going to listen, who's a endurance athlete. That's
Yeah, 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 for sure. And this is something like now, fast forward, how long has it been since 2012? A really long time. Like,
13 years. Wow.
right. So like fast forward that many years and now I'm a coach myself and have been for a long time. And I teach my athletes this all the time, but it started with me, right? So like endurance athletes are so driven and it's very easy for us to do too much, especially when our fitness gets really, really good, because
Hmm.
we can just go and go and go and go and go, but our body needs rest. And I feel like one of my biggest jobs as a coach and one of Allison's biggest jobs when she was my coach was like reining people in. Like recovery is important.
Yes.
And so, I remember specifically, I'm such an opportunist. I'm like, oh, it's beautiful and I need to ride, but I lived in Colorado at the time. It was always beautiful and I always needed
Yeah.
to ride.
Yeah.
And I remember one day, Allison, I was like kind of griping to her because it was so beautiful and I wanted to ride. And Allison's like, why don't you just go out in the yard and lay in the grass and read a book and enjoy the nice day that way? And I was like, ooh, never thought of that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was huge. And then, strength training, like just building durability as an athlete and as a human. Like cycling is a very linear sport,
Hmm.
especially road and gravel cycling. Mountain biking, a little bit less so. Mountain biking is a little more dynamic, but it's still pretty linear. When you're riding more technical terrain or when you're doing the type of riding that I do now, like bike packing, where your bike is loaded, like there is a lot of hike a bike. Like you got to be good at pushing a heavy thing up a hill or
Hmm.
lifting a heavy thing. So like bike packing is way more of a, I call it multi-sport activity because it does involve that. But, regular mountain biking, cycling, it's super linear. And so it's easy to develop overuse injuries when you're only moving your body in one way. And so it's so important to strength train to just move your body in different ways, build more durability. A lot of so myself, like I wasn't just a mountain biker. Like I love trail running, I love backcountry skiing. I used to be really into rock climbing. Now I'm really into whitewater kayaking. So people that want to be able to do multiple outdoor adventure sports can't
Hmm.
just train on the bike. They have to become a durable human that can move in lots of different ways. So that's kind of what weight training did for me and still does for me. Now, I don't go to a gym anymore. I live in the middle of nowhere. There is no gym anywhere around me, but I have rocks and stumps and logs and all sorts of creative things that I use for strength training these days.
I love that. I'm gonna transition to, yeah, like let's talk about your lifestyle a little bit because it's like it's awesome. It's also very different. But like you currently live out of your van, correct?
Hmm.
How long have you been doing this?
Let's see. I've been living in and out of vehicles for a lot of my life. I think the first time was actually when I moved to Colorado when I was 17. I lived in the back of my Pontiac Sunbird convertible hatchback in the woods before I started college for like a month. And various times throughout my life, for me, it's like it's the ultimate freedom, and freedom is 100% my strongest value, and
Yeah,
especially location freedom.
yeah.
And so I moved full time I have a little 1997 Chevy Astro van named Susie Blue. Moved full time into that van in 2015. And that's actually when I left conventional healthcare and went on the road full time as a pro athlete and with my little virtual business on the side that I started in 2013. And so I was 6 years in my van full time. And then near the end of that time, I met my partner slash COVID happened. And so then I was kind of part time in the van. And also I got a brain injury in 2020. And so with all of those things kind of coming together, and I had my dog was near the end of his life and was having more trouble traveling. And so kind of everything came together in 2020, and I needed to be a little more stationary and stable. So for a few years, I lived in the van part-time and in a house part-time. And then this past year, my partner and I moved back into a van full-time. We did get a bigger van than my little 97 Chevy Astro that was perfect for me and my dog, but a little small for two people that are working.
Mhm.
So now we have a bigger van, but we are back in it full-time. And yeah, so pretty much like more on than off since 2015, so 10 years.
What has that lifestyle taught you?
Oh my goodness, we could talk an entire multiple hours about this. Okay, one of my favorite things actually that it's taught me is how to be a car mechanic.
Mm, yeah,
When I moved into my van, I just kind of told myself that I was going to learn how to work on it. Like I really wanted to be self-sufficient. I've always been a pretty self-sufficient person, and I was like, all right, if I'm going to move into this older van, I'm going to learn how to work on it. And so I just started learning, and I mean, YouTube is amazing. You can learn anything on YouTube. But I found that I actually really love working on cars.
mhm,
And so I've replaced tons of different parts in my van. I love working on cars so much that I bought a project car last year, 84 Toyota Tercel, that my partner and I have restored together, are still restoring, but it's my daily driver now. So I found this like new passion that I had no idea, that didn't have anything to do with being an athlete, which like for me was super important because when I got my brain injury and I couldn't be an athlete for quite a while, like I turned to other things, and like working on my cars was one of the things that I really enjoyed. So I guess kind of bigger picture, like just a lot of self-sufficiency, a lot of like kind of realizing that we don't really need all the things that we think we need.
yeah,
I don't have electricity or running water, and like that's fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like, oh man, we could go down a rabbit hole with, like I obviously I live in a house. I have, a garage, like gym and stuff, but I do really subscribe to the general notion that like the more things you own, the more things own you. And
Yeah.
I do try to hone like, and there's also just this weird itch to consume that like
Hmm.
I get that I actively like have to like resist, and sometimes that comes out in the form like I love books, like I have multiple bookshelves
Hmm.
behind me and XYZ, and it's like, do you really need that book? Sometimes it's like yes, sometimes
Hmm.
it's no, but I do think like I was reading something not very long ago, and it's like humans actually have like a very like we like to be cozy, like having
Totally.
being in a bedroom that is too big
Hmm.
isn't actually like comfortable for us.
Hmm.
It actually like
Hmm.
kind of creates a little bit of like a weird anxiety, whereas like a bedroom that is like a little bit cozier, that's pretty much just the only thing you do in there is sleep, is like really powerful.
Hmm.
And I think like the van lifestyle, or that's like the ultimate example of it. And it also
Hmm.
like it teaches you how little like you need a lot of the shit that people get hooked on. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, another thing that I really love about it is like it allows me to be really close to nature all the time. This year in general, or like in particular this year, so my partner and I actually own two properties, one here in Darrington, Washington, which is where I'm at right now, and another one in Catalina, Arizona, which is about 45 minutes north of Tucson.
Mm,
And this is the first year that I've been living outdoors in one space. Like we've been in Darrington since May. And like seeing the way that the seasons change and the months change and the weeks change, like in the natural world in one spot has been really amazing. And we have caterpillar season, we have baby slug season, we have
yeah,
spider season, all of these things that you miss when you're living in a house. And we are building a house. We actually are planning to break ground on a house in Tucson this winter. We're building it ourselves and we're doing straw bale with earthen floors. And we've intentionally built a lot of indoor outdoor spaces into our dwelling because neither of us want to lose that connection with the outside world and with like
yeah,
the creatures that live around us and the weather and everything. And so like, we are planning on house life, but also the building of the house is going to be a pretty cool adventure.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and using the natural materials. We're pretty excited.
So I'm gonna come back to your brain injury, and I want to talk a little bit about that specifically in a second here. You said you could talk for hours about like that type of stuff, and I'm not gonna make you do that, but you mentioned just freedom and adventure there.
Mhm.
And like I don't want to make this like a social critique per se, but like why yeah, do you think a lot of people are actually like missing like adventure and freedom in their life in like our current era?
I do. I mean, I don't know. I like the first thing that popped into my head was like maybe not everyone is quite as wired for adventure. Like some people are and some people aren't. And I do think
Yeah,
that's true. And I do like truly believe that adventure is good for all of us. I think it
yeah,
stretches us and it challenges us and whatever type of adventure that is, like maybe it's not going to be riding your bike 800 miles for everybody, but I do also think that there is like a power to be found in doing things in nature and that connection with nature. And so, I like for me, like outdoor adventure combines those two things. And I do think that like a lot of people, people in my world, like the clients I work with and the people that I surround myself with, like they do get out and they do a lot of adventures. And so I don't really see the other piece of people
yeah,
that really don't. But, if anybody doesn't and they just have this little inkling of desire to maybe have more adventure in their lives, like I would 100% recommend it. And like it will change you as a person and it'll make you a stronger individual. And um, yeah.
yeah. I think I mean I think you're right that there's like certain level of wiring towards adventure, and I think there's also a certain level of like until you're exposed to some of these things, you're never gonna know. Like my wife has actually been really, like it's not that I didn't like the outdoors before we got married and stuff, but like my wife loves to like go to national parks and like loves to hike, and I've really like developed that type of I want to go to national parks. I want to go to hike. I want to be outside more. And I want to like adventure and like those are relatively like structured adventures, right?
No, you can get yourself into trouble on national parks. I
Yeah,
certainly have done
true.
that.
Yeah, right. So, but like, yeah, it's like you start to get these tastes for the outdoors. And I think it was even you who like they like, go vote against like the selling off of this public land where I like you gave me
Mm-hmm.
a link or you put up a link and I went and did it. I'm like, 'cause like, yeah, like we gotta cherish some of these things that we take
Mm-hmm.
for granted. And um
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, like you said, the adventure teaches you something. Usually there's some anxiety in even in going on a hike. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we were in no, we were in Glacier with my in-laws 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, and like my in-laws are 65 years old, going for a 6 mile hike. Like we have our 10-month-old baby, and it's like, how do like we don't know where we're going the whole time, even though there's trails marked and XYZ, but like you kind
Mm-hmm.
of learn to manage that stuff, and it's really powerful, right? And then it kind
Mm-hmm.
of gives you the taste for, all right, like, it can be dangerous or it can be awesome, but like, all right, let's go on another adventure type of thing, right? And
Oh yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
very like
Yeah.
I love that all around.
I also feel like it makes other things in life not seem quite as hard.
Yeah. Oh,
You know?
100%. Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
think about, I don't know, the things that I learned in business, in the Honey Badger project, like, like I've been in situations where it's literally life or death on the top of a mountain in avalanche terrain, and that's
Yeah.
scary. And
Yeah.
so like, potentially like failing in my business or having something not go well or whatever, like that's not scary.
Yeah. No, I
So,
mean, and I also think like to some extent it's not that it's binary, but like when you simplify your options a lot of times, or when you're in like a situation, it's like you either like you sit here and you camp or you get
hmm
going, right? Or
hmm
like that human we have too many options in
100%.
our day and
Yeah.
age, and it is stifling our decision making is because
hmm
also like you're probably not gonna make, most people are not gonna make a catastrophic decision, but it can feel like that in their brain, or they feel like they're missing out,
hmm
right? And it's like, no, like make a decision, learn from that decision, and then like keep going, right? And I
hmm
think
hmm
that's one of the things like I've also just learned too from like, yeah, when you're out and about doing these things, just make a decision, get prepared, and
hmm
see where it takes you, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And just keeping your head on straight, it's
yeah,
like you can't, when you're out there and you need to make an important decision, you can't freak out, So it's
yeah.
like learning. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned that I've taken with me everywhere is like how to just keep a cool head. And,
Mhm.
if I do start to get scared or anxious or like, oh my God, I'm going to die, whatever it is, like you can't make good decisions in that
No,
mindset. And so being able to have that skill to like bring your nervous system back down to make those good decisions is super important. And it's something that, I honed in the backcountry at a very early age and I use it all the time.
yeah. I love that. So let's talk about your brain injury. What happened?
hmm Crash my bike.
Okay, simple.
Short story long, long story short, crash my bike.
Yeah. How old
Yeah.
were you?
Oh, this was not long ago. This was in 2019. So I was 30, let's see, I'm 42. So 5 years ago. I was 37, or I think I had just turned 38, like a month after I turned 38. So it was a bad time. Like I had just broken the Arizona Trail women's record the year before. I was like traveling the world, racing my bike. I was fully sponsored. I was like at the peak of my like athletic career as an ultra endurance athlete as a woman, like late 30s is like kind of the peak.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was just out on a backyard ride with my partner and like crashing through it was kind of an overgrown trail, just crashing through the willows, and there was a sawed off baby aspen tree that was, I don't know, 3 inches in diameter, and it hit my front brake, sent me over the bars, hit a tree root on the trail, like lawn darted, head hit first, and scorpion, my bike flew over on top of me and it's going like 25 miles an hour. So
Mm.
yeah, a
Wow.
little bike crash.
So what were the immediate repercussions for you there?
Well, immediately. So I don't remember a whole lot. I do remember flying through the air. I do remember seeing stars. I don't think I actually got knocked out, but if I did, it was a short amount of time. I did ride out. We were near the top of a 3,000-foot descent, and it was in the evening, and it was, going to be getting dark. And I don't remember riding out. My partner was with me, so he remembers, and I have photographic evidence that I did indeed ride my bike to the trailhead. I don't
Yeah.
remember it.
Yeah.
But like with concussion, and especially I feel like with and like endurance athletes or outdoor athletes, like there's so much adrenaline happening that like your body kind of triages its needs. And
Mhm.
in that moment, my need was to get the F out of there, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, my partner drove us home, and it wasn't until I got home and I was safe that my body and my brain were like, you are not okay. And so,
Mhm.
that was super nauseous. That was the biggest thing, super dizzy. Was definitely like not seeing super well, a little bit of confusion, just like, did I finish that bike ride? Are you sure I finished that bike? That kind of thing. And so that was kind of the initial, and as a PT, I knew enough about concussion to know the red flags when I needed to go to the emergency room, and I didn't have any of those, fortunately. And so I just like basically went to bed because it was nighttime, and that that was kind of the immediate. And I'd had 3 concussions prior to that,
Mhm.
two mountain biking, one skiing, much earlier in life, and they were pretty textbook, like quick recoveries. My symptoms had gone within a couple of weeks, and I knew enough to wait a month before I got back on the bike. But so I thought that it was going to be a textbook quick recovery, and it very much was not.
Mm. So tell me more about that recovery and what, like, just, what do you think was, well, let's just talk more about like how long has it taken you or how long did it take, like what were some of the big signs that it wasn't going to be quick recovery, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, when I was still having symptoms a month later. Generally, if you're going to recover from a concussion on your own, without intervention, it's going to be within a month.
Hmm.
So the actual structural healing time of the brain is anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. Research has shown kind of that range, and you don't really know where you are on that spectrum. And so, what I tell people is like, don't hit your head again in the first 6 weeks because that could cause pretty serious brain damage. Let the brain actually heal structurally before you expose yourself to that. And so, my first mistake was trying. So I was training at the time. I was in the off season, but I was training for a big ski mountaineering pack rafting expedition that next spring. And so, my brain was very much like, get back on a horse. And so I knew not to get back on my outdoor bike, but I was back on the bike trainer within a week, like doing hard interval workouts. I should not have been doing that. That was way too much. And, you know, I was just doing too much too soon, effectively. I've learned with concussion, there are really two types of people. There are the avoiders and there are the pushers. Neither are good. There's got to be a balance there.
It's funny how much that dichotomy pretty much persists amongst a lot of things, and it's
Hmm.
tricky to help people find some
Yeah.
form of a middle ground, right? But
Yeah, so I was a pusher and I pushed too hard. And, a month after my injury, when I was still having really significant symptoms to the point that like I didn't feel comfortable driving or safe driving, couldn't go into a grocery store, definitely was not safe to get back on my bike outside. I was like, oh, shoot, this is bad.
yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of when I realized that things were not okay.
So then what was your pathway, you know, when you started to get treatment? And then honestly, to some extent, now a lot of what your work is focused on is concussion rehab,
Mhm.
recovery. How did that
Mhm.
inform you and make you want to be more of a part of that as a practitioner?
Yeah, so I mean, this has been a 5 year story, and I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version. But
Yeah.
I didn't have much help at the time. I was a small business owner, professional like sponsored athlete, and owned my little physical therapy and coaching practice on the side. And I did not have health insurance at the time, and it was just me running both my businesses. And so I basically had to shut everything down. So I lost my income, didn't have health insurance, and was not living in a state that I belonged to. Like I was a Colorado resident, still am actually, even though I literally have not lived there in 10 years. But when you don't live anywhere, you have to live somewhere, right? Like for the
Hmm.
government.
Yep.
And so I couldn't get on Medicaid because I was not in a state that I belonged to.
Yep.
And so I really couldn't get much help. I did have a few providers reach out and give me, a pro bono like visit here and there. And, as a PT, so I wasn't a concussion specialist at the time, but as a PT, I knew a lot more than, people who aren't rehab professionals already. And so I did a lot of my own rehab in the beginning. A lot of people think that concussion equals vestibular, right? Like I was one of those people before. And so I did a lot of vestibular rehab. I did a little bit of visual rehab that I knew. I did not know much about the concussions impact on the autonomic nervous system, which ended up being my downfall at the end of the day. So I did a lot of my own rehab, and then I did get some help with cognitive rehab, but I didn't know at the time that a lot of cognitive symptoms are because your brain is working so hard physically because you have so many impairments in the physical systems. And so I
Hmm.
was trying to work cognitive while I was still really struggling physically. That was kind of backwards. And so it was really, so I was doing that. And then on the other hand, I was still pushing to try to get back to racing and expedition. And I did a 9 day ski mountaineering pack raft expedition that spring. So that was like October, November, December, January, February, March, 5 months post concussion. Should not have been there. I could have died. um, my friend and I, we were pack rafting down a river with our skis in southern Utah, and then we basically, with skis on our back, like climbed up slot canyons and through this like massive desert canyon up to the Henry Mountains, and then skied across the Henry Mountains, and then back down. And so, like, I remember being in these slot canyons and looking up and looking down and just having such awful vertigo, and telling my teammate Jeff, like, this is bad. I like the world is spinning. Like you need to spot me because there's a good chance I might fall. And so like Jeff was a wonderful teammate on that trip. Like I would not have been able to do that without him, but also shouldn't have been there. And so, there was that trip in March. And then a few months later, I went back to bike pack racing. I attempted to race a 700-mile single track race called the Oregon Timber Trail up in Oregon. And that just went all sorts of sideways. Like my brain started doing all sorts of weird stuff. And I ended up pulling out because I couldn't tell if I was going uphill or downhill. And I was like, had really bad insomnia. That was kind of a through line, like for those 3 years, short story long, that's like how it looked. I was just pushing, trying to, appease my sponsors, like trying to be an athlete, like, yeah, I'm going to do these races, trying to push through. And I had insomnia for literally 3 years. I mean, like in daily life, it's very rare that I would get more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And then when I was out in the backcountry on a trip or in a race, I wouldn't sleep at all. And I just thought, okay, this is my new normal. I just have to push through this. This is what the concussion did to me, and it is what the concussion did to me. However, at the end of 2023, I had gotten so bad, like I mean, physically, mentally, emotionally, like downward spiral to the point where I was like, I need to get help. Like, I don't know what's happening. It's been 3 years since this concussion. Is this still the concussion? Am I just getting old? I'm 40 now. Like, what is going on? And I had so many people tell me that it was just, I just needed, like we all think that exercise helps with sleep because generally it does, right? And so I would go out and exercise so hard thinking that if I was tired enough, I would sleep, and I wouldn't. And what I finally learned, I finally found the right provider at the end of 2023, who is a concussion specialist physician that knows endurance athletes. And here's the thing, concussion protocols, return to sport protocols were not developed based on endurance athletes. They were developed based on team sports athletes that do not, do their thing all day long, for multiple days on end. And so I had followed the return to sport protocols that were developed around football players. Like that, that did not work for me. And so he finally clued me into what was happening with me. And he also said, you need to go and get concussion specialist training because you're already a physical therapist. You could help so many people with this and you can help yourself. And so that's what I did.
I mean, I'm glad you found them. I also, yeah. It's when you telling your story, like, yeah, endurance athletes are like, it's, there's just there's a big difference between somebody training to play football, which is like a stop start, or even basketball, even though there's a high cardiovascular demand in basketball or any of these sports, but like a stop start, type of thing versus, honestly, something where you're going for long periods of time. So have you gotten your sleep? Like, how are you sleeping now? Like, tell us a little bit about.
Awesome. Yeah. So effectively what was going on is that I had exercise-induced dysautonomia. And so my autonomic nervous system was dysfunctional because of the concussion. And I had like, we call it exercise intolerance. And so effectively, and I see this in like 80% of my clients now. Like it is not rare. I thought it was rare because I never had heard of it. And I talked to other concussion specialists when I was going through it, and they didn't say anything about it, right? And so what happens is, when we're exercising, our autonomic nervous system is raised into sympathetic mode, right? Fight or flight, but it's also exercise, right? Yeah. And so when the autonomic nervous system becomes dysfunctional with concussion, sometimes you're not able to bring your nervous system down into parasympathetic mode in order to fall asleep. And that's what was happening to me. And so what I ended up having to do was literally take an entire year off of physical activity, which was so challenging. But you talked about like, oh, you do some stuff like playing the guitar and things like that. Like I really had to lean on other things in my life. I also play guitar and ukulele. I love working on cars. It's like I had to lean into these other things that I could do, and I could not run or bike for an entire year. I could whitewater kayak because in whitewater kayaking, like the river is doing most of the work. You just have to steer. That's not totally true, but it's not as cardiovascular as, jogging or whatever. And so I took an entire year off to help my nervous system reset, and I really dove into rehab and all of the things that I was learning. So I've done now literally 2 years straight of concussion specialist training and mentorship. Just like one clinical mentorship intensive program after another. It's almost been like a mini residency. And so, I did focused on rehab all of 2024. I also got 2 more concussions in 2024, which is wild because I wasn't on my bike or anything. Two freak accidents, nothing to do with sports. And so rehabbed from those. And then basically at the beginning of 2025, so during that time, during 2024, my sleep was getting better because I was no longer exercising. And so that's what it took at first. And then beginning of 2025, I started working my way back into exercise. And it started with like 20 minutes on the bike trainer at a heart rate under 120, right? And building from there. And then taking myself through the progression of, duration or intensity or frequency, not all three at the same time. So you progress one thing, you regress the others, right? That's how we know this. This is how it works. And I was able to bring myself from only being able to tolerate riding for 20 minutes and being able to sleep that night. And now I can do 7.5 hours. So that's where I'm at now. It's a huge improvement. I would like to be able to go for longer because I want to be able to do backcountry trips again. I have tried 2 bikepacking trips this summer, and it seems that if I ride a loaded bike for around 6 to 7 hours, I sleep really well that night. And if I go past that, then I get the insomnia. So I'm, just very gradually trying to push that threshold of how long can I be moving my body and then still be able to come down enough to sleep that night. So I'm very much still in the process. Other than that, I feel pretty normal. But, if I was not an ultra endurance athlete, I'd be like, yep, I'm healed. But I have this thing that I want to do,
You're trying to get back to, like something like that. I mean, and that's kind of the game. I think there's an element of, I'm curious, was the year, this is one of the things, like there's always protocols. Like there's protocols. I really think the measure of a good practitioner is to look at the principles and the protocols and then say to an individual, this is what we have to do. What was the decision making behind a year? Why not 6 months? Why not a year and a half? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the decision of a year, that more came from the physician that I was working with.
Gotcha.
And based on a lot of objective testing that he did, and he has a concussion specialty clinic in Tucson, and based on all the objective testing that he did in the clinic, based on my story, based on some tracking that we did with my heart rate variability, my heart rate response time, and my background, his hypothesis was that it would take an entire year, potentially more, for me to undo all the damage that I had done in the previous 3 years.
Gotcha.
And so that was kind of he was like, I don't want you to even think about racing, multi-day trips, huge days in the backcountry for an entire year. And, you need to just reset your nervous system, reset your brain, reset your body, focus on rehab. I went for walks and stuff, and I did a lot of kayaking, but, that was kind of his guidance. And at that point, I was in such a bad place at the end of 2023, I was willing to do anything to turn it around. And then, after the year, it was kind of like, let's see, it's not like, okay, a year has passed, I'm going to go enter a bike race, it's like, let's be curious about what could be possible now. And it was a really slow comeback. And, a lot of my clients, I sometimes people do have to take some time off, but I have not had to tell anybody, I think you need to take a year off.
Yeah.
But not many people dig themselves into the hole that I dug myself into during those 3 years, trying to do 800-mile races multiple times a year, training. I mean, I was training 20 plus hours a week as a pro ultra endurance athlete. So that was a pretty big hole that I dug myself for 3 years. And with plus the insomnia on top of that. So I'm doing all of this on no sleep basically. So I was pretty messed up.
It's I mean, it's like you were pushing on top of, and it's like, it's not an invisible injury. But it's like if you would have broken your leg.
Oh yeah, I mean, concussion is a pretty invisible injury.
It's pretty invisible.
I mean, I would go around and people would be like, "Oh, you look great. Are you better?" I'm like,
So
yeah. And within that year, so we're tracking metrics too, right? So we're tracking heart rate variability every single morning, first thing. We're tracking my heart rate throughout the day, HRV throughout the day, blood pressure, and all of these things. When I would just go for a walk with my dog for maybe a half an hour, slow, my dog is 16, right? So very slow pace. I would look at my heart rate variability and my heart rate immediately before and then immediately after. And if that's not recovering after something like that, then I have no business trying to run or ride my bike.
Yeah.
So,
and I, and that situation, I kind of talked about, alluded to, like there's so much noise in fitness, and like to some extent you got into biking by just training hard for a period of time and having fun with it. And then you got more into like, okay, I need to like get serious here, track some data, XYZ. It's data can be very helpful. It can also be like
Hmm.
noise, but like in a situation post concussion, long term health prognosis, it's like you got to start being objective
Yeah.
with some of these measures, right?
Especially when you can't go by symptoms.
Yes,
It's like early on in concussion, you can go by symptoms, and we have, a symptom threshold that people can, like, we want people to push through symptoms a little bit,
yes,
especially after that first month, right? To increase your threshold, but not blow through your symptom threshold. Otherwise, you tell your nervous system it's not safe, and that doesn't go well.
yeah,
But you push symptoms a little bit. But once you get past the point of having symptoms, like for those 3 years, I was not like riding through symptoms. I felt great when I was riding. My only symptom was not being able to sleep at night. And I
yeah,
didn't connect those dots, right?
yeah,
And so, with a lot of the athletes that I work with now, it's the same story. They feel great when they're exercising, when they're, running or riding or doing their thing, but then the
yeah,
symptoms come hours later or that night or the next day. And
yeah,
so, like, when you're in that place, you really do have to track a lot of metrics, and that's really the only way to to do it, really. And
yeah.
so I'm taking, I take a lot of the protocols from sports science, honestly, because there's not a lot of concussion protocols for endurance athletes. Like,
Yeah,
even in all of the advanced training that I've done, a lot of my mentors have been like, yeah, this, like, endurance athletes are kind of an outlier.
yeah,
And so I've taken a lot of my protocols from the sports science research and then extrapolated them to concussion. And that's what worked for me. And that is definitely working for a lot of my clients as well.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of a well, it's the the human nervous system and mind are very, very interesting. Like honestly, just to be the mind of the guy who ran like 140 miles like 2 weekends ago. It's like that guy's
Hmm.
mind is different
Hmm.
in a way that he probably trained himself to be to some extent, but also like yeah, like there is that element of that the hormesis type of effect where you're in like like I know when I go warm up or I get an activity and like I feel good after the fact, but there's also like there is an element to too much training equals no performance when it comes to
Hmm.
more, especially like more endurance requires you to, have like a duration type of goal with like an intensity type of goal layered onto that, right? Where people don't necessarily understand what they're doing to themselves when they're doing that, but there's also like an element like people don't necessarily understand what themselves when they're doing like they're trying to lift 90%,
Hmm.
for 5 sets of 5 type of thing, and how they can ramp themselves up, but that can dig themselves into a hole from like a recovery standpoint or XYZ, right? It's like
Hmm.
very, very interesting. And I think we're still on the cusp of like figuring out, a lot of people talk about like central nervous system fatigue or whatever, CNS fatigue. And like, we
Hmm.
don't even know what the hell that means most of the time. Like,
Hmm.
but we do know that your performance is suffering and you
Hmm.
feel like shit. And so
Yeah.
we should probably investigate that. And then, but yeah, like in your situation, it's so wild that like you got yourself through it in like a survival standpoint.
Hmm.
And it's good to see that things are on a good trajectory for you, which is really,
Hmm.
really cool. Also, it sucks that it had to be like 3 years of not good stuff, but
Yeah, but I've learned so much, it's like I feel like and I would push the reset button in a heartbeat. All right, I'm not glad that this all happened to me, but like because it did, I definitely feel like it's my duty to use that to help others as much as possible.
yeah,
And and I know a lot and I've learned a lot from my experience and also from the education that and the mentorship that I've gotten since. And it's been cool to watch it work in myself because I was one of the people that I thought was never going to get better. I was
yeah,
like, okay, it's been 3 years. Like, this is my life now. Like, maybe I can, like, be the person that can do a little bit of activity, but I'm never going to be an endurance athlete again. And I believed that. And in using what I have learned, the education that I've learned, the protocols that I've learned, like, I have blown past the thresholds that I thought I had for myself. So,
yeah. I love that. I mean, beliefs are powerful. The belief that things can get better and seeing a pathway with the right mentorship
hmm. Hmm.
also is often very powerful.
Hmm.
A lot of times though, that's like kind of challenging, or it's maybe not exactly what we want to hear. But I'm glad you found somebody that helped you. And there's also a level of that physician helped you understand in a way that hadn't been done prior, which I think is
Oh yeah.
huge, right? So,
Hmm.
no. Well, uh, Eliza, where do people find you?
Probably Instagram is the easiest way. It's just at Eliza Sampey, ElizaSampey, or my website, which is more about my work, elizasampey.com. And yeah, those are the main places.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for telling your story.
Thanks
And
for having me.
yeah, I will get this posted in the not too distant future, and I'll
Cool.
tag you in those things. But I appreciate your
Awesome.
time. Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if that's exactly what it looks like right now, but go out and enjoy the forest.
No, it's pissing rain. It's like the
That's
rainy
right. You
season
said at
now, so
the
it's
beginning of the wet season, right? So
yeah, it's the rainy season. However, the river's coming up and I will be whitewater kayaking hopefully for the next 2 weeks straight. So pretty
there you go.
stoked.
I
Yeah.
love it. Well, enjoy your freedom. I'm glad you're doing well, and thanks so much.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Peace.
Bye.